Did you know that originally the followers of the Baal Shem Tov called themselves Balei Tshuva? The name Hasidim came later, and it was given by the Misnagdim who were against the Baal Shem Tov. They, in a sarcastic way, referred to his followers as Hasidim. And they got it right. But originally, the name that the Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim chose for themselves was Balei Tshuva, which is really interesting because it started off that way and it ended up being that way. So in order to understand what makes us different and why we're different and how we're different, let's go back to the beginning. The Baal Shem Tov asked Mashiach, "When are you coming?" Why did he ask? We learn in the Gemara that there was a Tana who asked Mashiach the same question. And Mashiach said, Hayoim. And of course the day came and went, and Mashiach didn't come. So the Tana asked Eliyahu Hanavi, how could Mashiach say he's coming today and he didn't come today? So Eliyahu Hanavi said, what he meant was the beginning of the pasuk, of the verse, of the phrase, Hayom im bekoilei tishma'u. So we already have the answer, right? When is Mashiach coming? On the day that we listen. Bekoilei tishma'u. The day that we listen to the Eibishter, Mashiach will come. So what was the Baal Shem Tov asking again?
When are we going to listen?
The Baal Shem Tov was convinced that we were listening. That from the time of the Gemara, or of the Mishnah, when Mashiach was first asked, and he said, Im bekoilei tishma'u, since then, we have listened. So now the question is, we fulfilled that condition, when are you coming? So first of all, you see that the Baal Shem Tov was motivated in everything by his Avas Yisrael. He saw Yidden as being very good, as listening to the Eibishter and fulfilling that condition. And that's why he was surprised. Why is Mashiach not here? So what did Mashiach tell him? Kisheyefutzu meinesecha chutza. That explains everything. Those three words, Yafutzu meinesecha chutza, that explains exactly who we are and why we are what we are and why we do what we do. But let's break it down. First of all, the word yafutzu, to spread. What that means, in very practical terms, is the Baal Shem Tov's teachings need to be spread. And the word yafutzu implies endless, unlimited expansion. That, of course, means all Jews. That whatever it is the Baal Shem Tov is teaching is not for some people, it's not for a group of people, it's for everybody. The second word, ma'ineisecha, your well springs. Not some commentary on your well springs, but the well springs themselves. So you might think the Baal Shem Tov had a very profound and very holy avodah. Nobody can compare to his level, to his madrega. Nobody can be like him. So what do we have to spread far and wide? Some aspect, some detail, some watered down version that is accessible to the average person. So the second word says, no, ma'inei secha, the wellspring, not just the water that comes from the well, which means that everything the Baal Shem Tov taught and everything the Baal Shem Tov did is the property of the public. Every Jew should know and should learn and should understand what the Baal Shem Tov taught and said. Nothing is reserved for special people. And the Rebbe, of course, personified that, because so many times the Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe told me privately certain things, but since he knew that I will not keep it a secret, then he obviously meant for it to be told to everybody, because he knew I would. There is no privileged knowledge. Everyone needs to know everything that they can. Nothing is withheld. Nothing is off limits. That means that what the Baal Shem Tov stood for and what the Baal Shem Tov was megala, what the Baal Shem Tov revealed, must be brought down itself to a level where everyone can appreciate it. Not watered down, but explained. That's Chabad. So why is Chabad Chabad? Because Moshiach said that it has to be ma'inei secha. It can't just be, let's get together and get excited and we'll all be good. It has to be the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov in a way that every person can grasp it and every person can appreciate it and apply it to their own life. And number 3, the last word, chutza. Chutza means beyond any limitation you can think of. So of course it goes beyond the limits of the Hasidic community to all Jews, beyond the limit of Jews to all decent human beings, beyond the limit of all decent human beings. It's got to reach every human being, so that there is no chutzah left. Because as long as there is a chutzah and you haven't gotten there, you're not fulfilling the Baal Shem Tov's instructions or Moshiach's instructions. Now let's understand what Chabad means. There are people who believed, and some still believe, that the Baal Shem Tov brought a great inspiration. By his example, he inspired everybody. He brought a godliness down to earth by performing miracles and showing that nature is nothing, the world is nothing, godliness is everything, which is what miracles demonstrate. And then his Talmidim, who are like him, do the same for their Hasidim. They inspire, they are a living example of holiness, and they lift you up and inspire you, and you go off excited about godliness. No explanations, no teaching, no learning, just inspiration. And that's fantastic. Makes a huge difference in people's lives. The Alter Rebbe understood the Baal Shem Tov and knew that the Baal Shem Tov wanted his inspiration to become available to the human mind and through the mind to the heart. So it's not enough to be excited by someone else's holiness, as great as that is. You have to find your own, which means it's got to make sense to you, and it's got to affect your heart and your emotions, and you can't just borrow inspiration from somebody else. In simple words, the difference between the other approach and Chabad is the difference between external and internal. Chetzenius and Pnimius. Chetzenius means, external means, you're getting your inspiration from someone else or from somewhere else. It's imported to you. It exists in someone else, and you're borrowing or you're reacting, you're affected by someone else's holiness. Not good enough. It has to be your own inspiration, internal, from within. The difference is whether you have das or you don't have das. We'll get back to that in a second. This is also the difference between Avraham and Yitzchak, which we're learning in the parsha. Avraham dug wells, but they got covered up and filled in. Yitzchak dug wells, and they remained. What is the difference between Avraham and Yitzchak? Avraham inspired his generation through his own intense godliness and holiness. And when people saw and heard his emunah, they got excited and joined him in his emunah. What will it take to turn such a person off? How long will that inspiration last? So the Torah tells us that when Avraham passed away, all the people that he inspired kind of drifted. Because without him, they didn't have their inspiration. That's like digging a trench from a place where there is water, and you bring the water in the trench, in the trough, whatever it is, you bring the water from where there is water to where there is not water. And so the place that has no water comes alive. But how difficult is it to cut off that water supply? If you're piping it in, you plug up the pipe, it's all over. Yitzchak had a different approach. We don't import. If you want water, dig where you are and where you live. Dig until you find the water. Because every place has its own water. Only it's buried. So you got to dig a well. But don't bring water from someplace else. When you find the local water that is natural, organic to that place, it's very hard to close it up. It belongs there. That's called Pnimius. So Yitzchak demanded that every person that he inspired find their own inspiration. He inspired them to find their inspiration. That's called Pnimius. As a preparation for Mashiach, we have to follow Yitzchak's example, because when Mashiach comes, instead of saying Magen Avraham, we're going to end with Elikei Yitzchak, or Pachad Yitzchak. So Yitzchak is going to become the primary patriarch. The difference between external and internal, personal and impersonal, is the quality called das. Where there's no das, there's no internal, there's no pnimius. With das, it becomes pnimius. So the Gemara says, the dobe kulabe, those who have das have everything. The do loibe, those who don't have das, mabe, what do you have? meaning to say, what's yours? If you don't have das, you can be inspired by somebody. You can be inspired by an event. You can be inspired by a vision. But what do you have? Ma bei, what's in you? Empty. So das is the crucial ingredient that takes something that is high and above you and turns it into something pnimi within you. That makes all the difference in the world. So, for example, years ago, Chabad invited non-religious, non-observant Jews to come spend Shabbos, to come for Yontif, to shake a lulav and esrog, to put on tefillin, to light a candle. And the rest of the world was horrified, the frum world. Why were they horrified? Because, once you open the door and you start talking to non-frum people, you don't know where this is going to end. That's natural if there's no das. Because das, what makes it pnimi, means you can distinguish. You have the power of discernment. You know the bad part and you know the good part. So ignore the bad part and take the good part. But when there's no das, then everything is general, because makif is also general. It's the klal, not the prat. So when you have only a general approach to Yiddishkeit, then you treat everything in its general value or general nature. So if there's something not so good about a person, you have to reject the whole person. It's like an all or nothing mentality. Das says, ignore the bad part, take the good part. Use your discernment. Like, for example, the approach to Israel. Israel is secular, it's not kosher, you have to avoid it, you can't be a citizen, you can't pay taxes, you can't buy a stamp. All or nothing. Because once you say, no, there are some good parts, who knows where this is going to lead? Because once you open the door, instead of being all bad, it will become all good. And you'll accept everything, including the secular parts and so on. Chabad doesn't have that problem. When you understand and when you learn and when you internalize Torah and mitzvahs, you can make your way through and make the right choices as you go. What's bad is bad. What's good is good. So the first distinction that came when Chabad started doing kiruv, outreach, is because you see the greatness of a Jew, you appreciate the neshama of a Jew, achelek elokah mimal, you see the desire that the Jew has to be a good Jew, and you also notice that he doesn't know how to be a good Jew, and so he's doing everything wrong. So, yamin mikareves, you draw them closer with your right hand, and you keep the bad part away with your left hand. That's why we have two hands. So it's not all or nothing. That's called pnimius. Because of pnimius, we find, for example, an interesting, there's a minhag, a nusach, where before Shemona Esrei, Friday night, everybody says, V'shomru b'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos. The Alter Rebbe says not to say it. When the Alter Rebbe was talking to the Barditchever, because they were related through marriage. Their grandchildren would get marrying. The Berditchever asked the Alter Rebbe, how come you don't say V'shamru? Don't you know when Jews say V'shamru Friday night, it causes a tumult, a marketplace in heaven? And the Alter Rebbe said, yes, but you don't have to go to every market. You don't have to be at every market. So what did that mean? There's no question that when you say V'shamru, it causes a great stir in heaven. The Alter Rebbe says, well, what does it do for you? There are many, many holy things, but they don't affect you. You can't internalize it. You can't apply it to your own life, and it'll cause a stir, but it won't last. So because we prefer the Pnimi, we don't do everything that can inspire unless it can be internalized and become a permanent part of your Avedas Hashem. We don't decorate the sukkah. Why? Because are you enjoying the sukkah? V'samachta b'chagecha. Are you enjoying the sukkah? Or are you enjoying the decorations? They're shiny, they're beautiful, they're cute. So what happened to the enjoyment of the sukkah? Pnimius. Almost every distinction, everything that is different about Chabad is because of this. The challenge for us is that if we're going to avoid external inspirations, we have to make sure that we're replacing it with internal inspiration. And that when it is internal, you are more committed, you are more devoted, you're more willing to sacrifice, because it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. So you see, if you're inspired by an external source to do something that is difficult for you, you have a real conflict. The external inspiration moves you to do it, but your reality condition demands the opposite, argues against it. They can't continue this way. One of them has got to give. But when it's internal, when it's your Yiddishkeit, it's your Eibishter, it's your Torah, it's your Mashiach, then if it's difficult and there are obstacles in your way, it doesn't contradict. This is my thing, and if something gets in my way, is there a question as to which one I'm going to choose? So the history of Jews in Russia, for example, talk about obstacles. If you've read the book Samarkand, no? You should. I mean, if you want to talk about obstacles, that is like a 70-year obstacle. And yet, they didn't even realize that they were having Mesiras Nefesh. This is who they were. So if external conditions are obstructing them, the external conditions got to go. What's the question? Like if you're working for your family, you're taking care of your children, could you ever call that Mesiras Nefesh? It's your family. So the challenge is to make sure that we get it right because we're putting all our hopes on this to get it right. That our children should know, that we should know, this is not somebody else's Yiddishkeit. This is who we are internally. And the greatest surprise that the Rebbe left us with, the last mimer that he gave out, he revealed something that is absolutely mind-boggling. He said that when we're in Golus, even in a very nice Golus, where everything goes our way, begashmius and beruchnius, there's a lot of Torah learning, there's a lot of Yiddishkeit, there's a lot of tshuva going on, yeshivas are growing, they're full, there are new yeshivas opening up, everybody, and physically, we're secure, we're comfortable, we're affluent, we're nice Golus. The Rebbe says, the nature of every Jew is that no matter how nice the Golus is, the thought that there is still some corner of the world that does not know about the Eibishter makes you sick. It tears you up. Why? Because you are a chelek elika mimal. The Eibishter wants a dira b'tachtenim desperately. And if he wants it, then you want it, because you are a piece of him. And as long as he is not satisfied with a dira b'tachtenim, neither are you. So for a long time we thought, the Rebbe wants to bring Mashiach. The Rebbe wants to make a dira b'tachtenim. He really wants it. I mean, listen, he's so desperate. He's so sincere. He wants it so badly, we got to help him out. So when he says, why doesn't anybody say Ad Mosai? We said, okay, Ad Mosai, Ad Mosai. Thank you very much. You're such a good chassid. The Rebbe said in the Maimer, this is not my problem. This is not just the Eibishter's problem. This is our problem. And if you knew yourself, and if you got in touch with your inner truth, you would be shattered by the fact that the Golus is still going on, no matter how comfortable and nice the Golus is. I mean, if that's not Avos Yisrael, the Rebbetzin once said, I remember what the context was, but the Rebbetzin once said about the Rebbe, he thinks everybody's like him. He did. And it's true. Every nefesh elikis is elikus. If we're a piece of God, then we have the same needs as God himself. So we have to make sure that we know and that we can teach our children effectively. This is you. This is your Torah. This is your Eibishter. This is your problem. This Golus is for you to fix. Not your grandfather from Russia. Not your teacher in Cheder. And that's really what it means, Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam. Not the world was created for my benefit. That's horrible. Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, the world was created for me to fix, not somebody else. In other words, it's my need. I'm not doing anybody a favor. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of things, but all of that is... no, actually, some of this is just practical sense, common sense. Like, why is it better to wear a sheitel than a tichel? Because a tichel slips off, you can take it off, a sheitel, you don't just whip it off in public, unless you want to freak people out. Pas Yisrael. Pas Yisrael is a halacha. I mean, the question is not why do we keep Pas Yisrael. The question is, how can anybody not? So some of this stuff is not really Chabad. Why don't we sleep in the sukkah?
We go back to the shaitel thing for one moment. There's some communities where it's unsneezed to wear a shaitel, and their tiffles never slip off. They're secured with I think glue or something.
They wear something underneath it, like a black bit. As far as shave their heads, but never take it off.
There are other ways of guaranteeing you don't show your hair.
I feel like there might be some more than just the practicality.
They don't need any more.
No, I'm saying, is there more of an answer? Okay, never mind. It's more cleaner. You're not showing the world. Now we need to know why you cover hair. We used to think it's because hair was beautiful. Now we know that's not true. We need to go deeper. Kabbalah. No?
And, again, very practically, it looks good.
Why is that?
When the Rebbe came out,
I like that.
yeah, like those hair style.
The objective is tznius, not ugliness. Well,
But scarves are beautiful too. I'm saying that's subjective.
but again, if you're thinking parochially, we can get our kids or our people, our community, we can have this custom of, we have to practice Yiddishkeit for everybody. And the mistake of thinking that tznius means don't be too good looking. See, again, if you can't make a distinction, then there's no das. Well, if you're good looking, who knows what's going to happen? Oh, stop it. That's not what tznius is. Anyway, sleeping in a sukkah. Why don't we sleep in a sukkah? Because the sukkah is so holy that how dare you sleep in it? How do you fall asleep in a place of holiness? How come nobody else feels that way? Because if you don't learn and understand what holiness means, then the holiness is only external. You don't feel the inappropriateness of sleeping in the sukkah. But once we know the holiness, it doesn't seem right.
So it's dependent on your knowledge if you don't know you should sleep in the sukkah.
Depends on your discomfort. If it's painful to sleep in the sukkah, then you're exempt. So why, if it's too cold, then we understand, well, it's painful, I'm not sleeping in a sukkah. And you're exempt. If it's raining and it ruins your soup, you're allowed to go inside and you can even eat inside.
But we even eat inside when it's pouring outside. I mean, outside. We still, and the Nile vouchers eat inside. What about that? Like we're doing also the opposite. Like we sleep inside, but they eat inside when it's pouring outside or snowing outside.
Because it's not a eating in the sukkah is not a contradiction to the holiness of the sukkah. Sleeping is. And by the way, those chassidim who eat in the sukkah while it's pouring, if they're miserable, they shouldn't be there. The trick is, even while it's raining, it's such a pleasure to eat in the sukkah that you don't mind. I remember a Fabrengen once we had in a sukkah, in a private sukkah, 1414. And it was pouring. And what happens with Bachern, what happens when it's pouring is that the dye that makes your hat black, it runs. So our shirts are turning black. And we're huddled together because it was also cold. But no one thought of leaving that Fabrengen. It was too good. It was too good. Until finally somebody said, we were thoroughly drenched and frozen to the bone, and somebody said, Isn't Elam Hazeh wonderful? This world is so good. The Gashmias, it's terrific. So if you're not feeling comfortable in the sukkah and you're just trying to prove some kind of whole, then there's no mitzvah to eat there. But the fact that it doesn't bother you because the sukkah is so meaningful, that's pnimis.
Does that work both ways? Like you should sleep in the sukkah until it's uncomfortable?
Now it's a minhag not to. So if you sleep in the sukkah, you're what are you trying to prove?
But why is the halacha to begin with to sleep in a sukkah? Isn't like the deeper meaning supposed to be in sync with the halacha? Like, if we're supposed to be uncomfortable to sleep in a sukkah, why is the halacha?
When Mashiach comes, will we sleep in the sukkah? Probably. But it's interesting, the Rebbe didn't sleep in the sukkah, but then again, you can't sleep outside the sukkah, so he just didn't sleep for 8 days. That's what he told his sister-in-law when he had the heart attack. She said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I haven't slept."
But that's so unhealthy, that you're not supposed to, whatever, injure yourself.
Yeah, it was not a chumrah. He couldn't sleep in the sukkah, and he couldn't sleep outside the sukkah.
So are we, it feels a little bit like a combination, like if you're doing this, it's not like there's different ways of fulfilling Hashem's Torah, it's that you just don't get it yet. Actually, a little bit harsh. I feel like I would. I just don't.
We'll take that off the tape. But yeah, pretty much. If the objective is to spread the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, then wherever they haven't spread is a problem. It doesn't mean that they're bad, it doesn't mean that they're doing something wrong, but we're not done. We're not done. So I'm not saying that everybody has to keep the customs, but the message, the approach.
But don't the customs reflect the approach?
Yeah. But you can have the approach and still have other customs. And that's good. Because there are different, when the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, put together the Siddur, he studied 60 different nuschos, 60 different versions of the Siddur. And he took out from every Siddur that part which is relevant to every Jew, not exceptional. So there are exceptional nuschos for certain people, for certain types, for certain levels. The Rebbe chose only that which is uniting and relevant to everyone equally. So also the minhagim are all meant to be universal. It's for everybody. It works for everybody. It doesn't mean that it's the only way.
Is that why we don't say all the different months?
Huh?
Is that why we don't say all the different months? Like for the Baal Bias and Zeus? We just say the
Yeah.
general ones.
And this is why when the Rebbe started the learning of the Rambam, the daily learning of Rambam, the Rebbe emphasized so many times, this is something that everyone can learn because it's just halacha. It's not Gemara with pilpul, where you have to be sophisticated and knowledgeable. This is halacha. Everyone can learn it. And if the Hebrew is a problem, you have it in English. And if 3 chapters a day is too much, do 1 chapter. And if that's too much, do the Sefer HaMitzvahs. But it's an inclusive, not an exclusive project. And we should always bear in mind, there is nothing that belongs just to you. Whatever a chassid does, whatever a chassid knows, whatever a chassid learns, it's for everybody. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow. But everyone should know everything you know. There are no entitlements, no privileged characters. So every inspiration, everything you find meaningful and inspiring is relevant to everybody if you just know how to present it in an understandable way. Here's the main thing. The difference between Chabad and religious Jews is that for religious Jews, Judaism is their religion. For Chabad, Judaism is emes, has nothing to do with religion. That's a huge distinction. So what the Baal Shem Tov wanted and what Mashiach instructed him to do is that Yiddishkeit must stop being people's religion and become the reality of the world, because nature, teva, creation, gashmias, was all created for Torah. Torah cannot be a foreign import into this world. It is the world. It's everything. It's the only reason the world exists. So to treat Yiddishkeit like a religion, like something being imported from heaven, we're not there. We haven't gotten there yet. So we have to stop treating Yiddishkeit like a religion, like some heavenly lifestyle. It's who we are, it's what we are, it's what the world is. So when we notice, the Rebbe said, open your eyes and you'll see how close Mashiach is. Open your eyes, what are you going to see? A world of corruption, what are you going to see? Where do you see Mashiach coming? There are developments where just simple natural instinct leads people to do what the Eibishter wants. That's a sign of Mashiach, not a sign of religiosity. So if everybody suddenly became religious, would that mean Mashiach is coming? No. That would mean we're really in trouble. Because when people become religious, it's not good for anybody. The miracle, for example, of the collapse of communism, which the Rebbe said was Mashiachdik. What's Mashiachdik about it? Who tore down communism? A religious person? A really inspired person? Gorbachev was visited by a malach and he became a tzaddik? No. The KGB tore down communism. That's Mashiachdik. And why did he tear it down? Because it's wrong. Not because he became religious. That's good. So a woman in Beis Chana once said, years ago, I don't know if I belong here. She loved learning. It was great. And then suddenly she said, I think I have to leave. I don't know if I belong here. Why don't you belong here? She says, everybody else seems to have had a religious experience, and they're all inspired. I'm here only because I've looked around and there's nothing out there. The secular world, there's nothing there. So I said, you're the only one who belongs here. That's Mashiachdik. I'm not becoming religious. I'm just cognizant of the fact that there is nothing else. That's Mashiach. Ein Eid Milvade is not a religious experience. Ein Eid Milvade could be a very disappointing experience. I thought I would find something out there in the world, but there's nothing out there. I'm so disappointed. Yeah, and that's Mashiach. So the Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim called themselves Balei Tshuva. Why? They were all very religious people. Why would they think to call themselves Balei Tshuva? Because the way that a Baal Tshuva approaches Yiddishkeit is the way for everybody. It's the only way, even if you're from birth. Because a Baal Tshuva means you weren't given Yiddishkeit, you didn't inherit Yiddishkeit, nobody inspired you to Yiddishkeit. It's your God, it's your Torah, it's your neshama, and that's why you do what you do. Everybody should be that way.